What's up, everybody? My movie Left It Wall is out now, and we got some screenings coming up in 2024. February 22nd, Tucson, Arizona. February 29th, Omaha, Nebraska. March 20th, Washington, D.C., and that is a free screening. So Washington, D.C., be sure to check out the movie. And March 22nd, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, we're doing a stand-up show, a screening, and a Q&A after, so I will physically be present at that one. Get tickets now at robplacone.com. I'll also be announcing more 2024 tour dates with both screenings, shows, screenings and shows. You get the idea. But for now, Tucson, Omaha, Washington, D.C., Pittsburgh. You can get tickets right now at romplacone.com. See you in 2024. Episode 15, Anthony Rankin. Anthony Rankin is a musician, songwriter, and producer. Among many other things, he works as a, quote, hired gun musician for large acts. What does that mean exactly? That means you have to walk into a high-level situation. Maybe it's a TV set and you're in the studio band, or maybe it's an arena or a large festival and you're the backing band for a main act. And sometimes you haven't rehearsed or even met your fellow musicians. And the moment you hit that stage, you need to sound and feel like you've been playing that material for 20 years. It's incredible. In that space, Anthony and his peers are quite literally among the best in the world. He's a humble guy. He doesn't necessarily like it when that's pointed out, but it's the truth. Also, he's one of my closest and oldest friends. We've been friends since we were 5 years old. He helped me through the toughest time I've ever had in my life. He's also one of the hardest working people I know. Sometimes when I don't feel like writing, even though I know I should, or don't feel like hitting a stage, even though I know I need to work out, I'll occasionally think, what's Anthony up to right now? And I'll choose to work that creative muscle. I hope everyone's lucky enough to have a friend like that. Please welcome to the show, Anthony Rankin. Anthony Rankin.
What's up, my man?
Good to see you, buddy. It's been way too long. We didn't get to hang last time you came through town because it was an abbreviated visit.
It was a lot of family stuff, wedding, all that kind of thing.
Which the pictures looked awesome.
It was great.
Dude, so here's where I want to start. So with this show, in December, I'm going to, feature people who are closer to me in my personal life, which is obviously that's you many times over. And, there's going to be 1,000 people. So presumably we would have had about 19 or 20 Decembers to choose from. But I wanted it to be this one. And here's why I was hoping it'd be this one. So you and I were classic rock nerds in first grade, which we were definitely the only kids in our grade. We might have been the only kids at our school.
Yeah, or even in this city.
At that age, potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, usually middle school, high school, like that's when people start getting into Zeppelin or something. That's not as... But we were in first grade.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, first of all, sometimes I wonder... I don't know what I would have done if I didn't know you. Sometimes I wonder, what if it would have just been me? I think it would have been I might have thought I had a problem.
Oh man, yeah. End up in therapy for Jethro Tull,
right? But so here's since you mentioned that, this is why to kind of put a period on this. This is why I was really hoping it'd be this year. So you and I were the first, we were first grade classic rock nerds. Definitely the only two. It's we spoke a different language, basically. Yeah. And your big thing was ZZ Top. And my big thing was Jethro Tull. And all these years later, first of all, we're still friends, which is pretty freaking awesome.
Yep.
And also, this year in particular, you got to jam with Billy Gibbons, and I got to interview Martin Barr.
How about that? And
yeah.
not very far apart, right? I mean, it was probably like within weeks.
Was it? I think
so, yeah.
I didn't even realize that part, but yeah. So that's sort of like a trippy. I don't know what you want to call it. Like just something about like I don't know if karma's the right word for it, but just sort of a trippy like. Oh, that's kind of weird. That like all these years later, something like that,
like a full circle moment, and we're both living far away from where we're from, and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, indeed. So I just thought that was just such an interesting thing to mention this year in particular. A year that, for me, and we're going to get into it for you as well. Like it has had some massive highs and crushing lows. Like for me personally, this has been one of the most Charles Dickens best of times, worst of times that I've had in a long time. So so let's start. I want to talk a little bit about where we grew up.
Yeah, let's do it.
As we both, and you are actually, as of the recording of this, there now. You're there. You're in the thick of it.
Ground zero.
So what's your kind of take on just having grown up where we grew up and how, how you are where you are now?
I feel like, I don't know. I think it is sort of the intersection of suburbia and the beginning of the city. I think when I was younger, I probably was like, "Oh, we're from the city," not quite,
not quite.
But it definitely has a little bit of northeastern vibe without necessarily being East Coast. There's this. I don't know. Pittsburgh in general, the whole Ohio Valley has sort of a marriage of East Coast and Midwest personality, for better and worse, I guess. And living in the South now, it's
is Nashville the South? Because that's a very disputed thing.
Yeah, it's geographically certainly, but
sure,
it's a transplant town like most entertainment towns. It's sort of the melting pot of melting pots, at least for the Southeast. But that's sort of, I feel like over time, the water gets diluted it becomes its own personality. Like Nashville is its own thing in general in terms of the culture and disposition of people.
Mm-hmm. So, I whenever I think about Pittsburgh, I actually think this, and let me run this by you, and I mean this in a good way. Like everyone's saying, "Oh, Pittsburgh's so different now. It's so different now," and I actually think, and I mean this as a compliment, I don't think Pittsburgh's changed all that much.
No,
but I mean that in a good way. Like I think, and I'm speaking as like from a creative lens. Pittsburgh has always had a film scene, a music scene, a comedy scene, all these other, it's always had all of that stuff. It's just smaller than some of the other places that might come to mind. Yeah, it's not in New York. It's not in LA. It's not in Nashville. It's not in San Francisco. It's not even a Boston or anything like that. But it's like you can find almost pretty much anything you can find anywhere else in the country.
Right.
You can find there. You just might find a much smaller version of it.
Right.
But that's kind of all. People are making it out like that's just happened 5 years ago. That's been the case as long as you and I have been alive, which we're both significantly older than 5.
Yeah, 7.5, right?
That's right.
No, but it's true because I feel like, when we lived here, we were still doing what we're doing now, or some iteration of what we are doing career-wise and life-wise now, and obviously left to do it at a higher level on a larger scale, perhaps. But we cut our teeth in this town, and there were still venues and outlets to explore, artistic endeavors.
So one of the things, going on that, you are the kind of guy, and I've always really admired this about you. You just know how to find your lanes. Like, you've always been that way. Like, even when we were kids, and you could have stayed in Pittsburgh and still made a living as a musician. You would have figured it out. I mean, because you did. I mean, you did before you left. And like, you're the kind of guy, like if for some reason you had to move to like Utah tomorrow, I don't know why I picked Utah, just random spitballing. But like, if you had to move to Utah tomorrow, like you wouldn't miss a beat. You would figure it out. And I've always really admired that about you. So what, I mean, how have you always been able to do that?
Well, first of all, thanks for the compliment. I don't know if I fully agree. It's just, sometimes it feels kind of the opposite, where I feel like I am sort of floating in the ether looking for a lane, or I don't know what lane that's supposed to be. But
well, I think we all feel that way at times.
Yeah, that's just life on Earth. I feel like with my dad being a musician, me kind of being born into this to a degree, maybe, not necessarily like the industry per se, but the approach to a career in music, I always kind of found it more, it's artistically fulfilling. It is rewarding on a personal level, on a soul level. But I look at it through the lens of like being based on skills, like, many other careers that are not artistic maybe, and just kind of trying to identify, even to this day, let's say I go to a session or a writing session, I can do a lot of different things in that environment, but I try to observe quickly what other strengths everyone else is bringing to the table, and then I try to be like the guy that fills in the blanks instead of like, if there's somebody who's really good at producing, I'm not going to kind of go out of my way to step on their toes in a session as a producer. I will step back and be, I don't know, some more melodic writer, or serve some more executive function, some broad strokes.
So let me ask you, let's talk about just your year in general then, because you've always been a very prolific guy. And, you're also one of my oldest friends. So I try to always follow everything you do. But this year, I mean, I don't know if I'd be able to pass the test of like what, I mean, dude, you have produced.
I can remember what I did this year.
You've produced so many records in addition to your own stuff. So, I mean, give a summary of your year. And of course, I'll have you plug everything later, but kind of give a summary of your 23.
So, 23, I'd say this is like year 2.5 post-COVID in terms of getting back on the road as a sideman. So right off the bat,
sideman, because some people may not know what that means.
Sure.
But that means like you are a hired musician.
Yes, basically a hired gun for an artist or artists to perform live. To it might be a session or whatever, but basically not a band member proper. I don't get money from the record sales. Not that there are any anymore. I don't get the 4 cents from streaming. I get that on my own sad music.
Did you get your Spotify check this year?
Yeah, I think it was
like $2 or something.
Yeah,
it's so
I can look it up. It's it's definitely it's not more than $100 at any given moment.
So, I mean, I'm honestly, I'm surprised because like they did that thing recently. That person got those millions of downloads and got like $12. Like it's remarkable what they get away with.
It feels unsustainable. I don't know.
Think it just feels that way. I would go as far as to say it is in fact unsustainable.
Yeah. There's got to be an answer. I just don't know who has it. It's not me, but
I was banking on you, so
yeah. Well,
I guess we're screwed.
I'll tell you. Oh man. But touring wise, this year was probably the busiest touring year I've had, maybe since I moved to Nashville, at least with one artist. I think we did about 80 shows in the span of 8 or 9 months. And with travel, that easily doubles. You know, you're looking
That's
at
a lot.
180, 200 days on the road. So I was doing that while also trying to maintain my production schedule. So typically what I would do is sessions Monday to Wednesday in Nashville, maybe Thursday, leave typically on a Thursday to do gigs Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday sometimes. And I'll take my studio basically on the road, work during the day before the show, play the show, go to the next town, set up in the hotel, keep producing, yada, yada. So at the top of the year...
there are people out there who think being a musician is glamorous.
It's great, yeah. Holiday Inns. I've been in every Holiday Inn in America.
Me too, my friend. You know, I can taste the cinnamon roll as we're having this conversation.
Yeah. The coffee is...
It's a certain thing, though. You know,
it is, yeah. You sort of get acclimated to it, right? It's I have like a sense memory for it almost.
It becomes a food group for you, and you just you know you're having hotel coffee right away. Like you know you're not home.
Yeah,
it's like that. If I was like blindfolded and didn't know where I was, between the cat not being on the bed, me being by myself, and then the first sip of hotel coffee, I'd be like, oh, I'm traveling.
Yeah.
I don't know where yet, but I'm definitely in a hotel of sorts.
Yeah, I get that. I forget where we were.
So you were talking about how, you've had a lot of dates this year. You've been producing records.
Yeah. So at the top of the year, the funny thing about making records at this point, and probably just, historically in general, is that there's no realistic or set timeline for anything. An artist can sit on a song for 2 or 3 years and then decide they want to put it out or not. Or, I've had artists that they get so excited about a song in a writing session, they want to release it in a month. So I've kind of experienced a lot of both of those scenarios in the last couple of years. And this year, at the top of the year, just as a personal goal, I said, I want to have a dozen releases as a producer slash writer. Either, if my name's on a record, that counts.
Wow.
But not my own. So I figured that's one a month. Maybe that's attainable. Maybe it's not. I think at the end of the year, I hit 18 or 19. But that just really came from a lot of saying yes and just really, a little bit of workaholism. But, if I had a date free on the calendar and somebody wanted to write, I would say yes. I was booking sometimes 2 and 3 writes a day, just to get catalog. And then a lot of that catalog this year that came out was from the work I did late last year. So now going to 2024, I'm kind of the same mindset where, okay, I think we're going to have, at least a dozen releases that are slated already for next year. And then I'll use that to kind of get more work, per se.
I mean, that's incredible. I think a lot, and I think even I myself don't realize the full extent of it, but between having friends like you and just being around music, I have a perspective on what it really means to be in the studio and to produce a song. I think the general person doesn't really even realize that. So it's like, to the general person, what you just described sounds still incredible, but it's like for anyone who kind of knows what it really takes. Yeah, to produce a record, it's nuts, man. It's an insane amount of work. I mean, even though we do have tools at our disposal that make it infinitely easier than it was even 20 years ago or 10 years ago, even. Sure. But even still, man, you still gotta capture that music. You gotta get the right takes. You gotta make the room right. It's a lot.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing, especially the last few years, is that I've gotten to produce a really kind of hilariously wide range of music, genre-wise or style-wise. And it's almost like it can be different jobs even under that umbrella. I'm in Nashville, obviously, so country music comes up, whether I love that or not sometimes. But I'm usually pretty lucky to work with artists who have a deeper point of view than just trucks and beer, so that's cool. But those records,
there's a lot of that stuff going on in the country world in Nashville. It's just a lot of people don't realize that. They think it's all like, they don't realize there's this whole other scene.
Right. Yeah.
That's like the opposite of all that.
Yeah. It's always kind of like under the surface, it's, if you live in town, I think you're more aware of it than just, someone who lives in the Midwest listening to their car radio or something.
Mm-hmm.
But the approach to doing a record like that is entirely different than doing like a synth pop record or something. And so it sort of forced me to grow new brain cells or something like that, where I definitely have felt challenged a lot in the last year or two, and really mentally exhausted at some points. But, in our business, your business and mine, it is, we were talking earlier, it's the sort of old adage of, you make hay while the sun shines. And because the future is so unpredictable, I could have a year where, I produce barely any records because my usual clients have moved on, or they want something different, or it's just not a year where the people I know in my camp or my network are doing a lot of work, or they're doing something else. So there is a bit of a propensity to overextend yourself, to kind of like say yes while the work is available.
So when you produce a record, like, because you work with so many different genres, how much, because, like a record producer, you're doing more than just pressing record, obviously.
Sure.
Yeah. But you're not necessarily the songwriter,
right.
But you do have some input as far as the anatomy of the song goes. So
right.
So when you're working with all these different genres, how do you navigate that? And is it different depending on the genre you're working with?
It's definitely different, even like philosophically, I would say. I don't know. I'd probably estimate 70 to 80% of what I produce, I'm also a writer on.
Oh, okay.
Which is not me taking credit, but me actually being in the inception point of the song when it was written. And that kind of gives me a better idea of how to approach things usually than if I just get a voice memo of someone's song or their idea and they're like, make this a record, which I do that too. But I do pretty much most of the post work myself. So I mix and master most of the records that I do. I definitely play, if it's a country record or a live band record, I'll play guitar and keys, and then we'll do a live session with drums and utility and other guitars and things. But pop record, I'm pretty much doing every instrument, every track, all the programming. So it's extremely tedious. I've done songs where I probably have 60, 70 hours into a song,
So, for anyone who doesn't know, Anthony has been in situations both live and in the studio where you've just basically like you've learned to play something on the spot, which is incredible. Like that, like it's like a superpower.
It's more like I've learned to fake how to play something on the spot. But
even still, I mean that's still incredible. Have you ever crossed something where you just couldn't maneuver it? Like, what has there ever been an instrument where you were like, oh man, this French bassoon is where I draw the line. I couldn't.
It's horns for sure. Horns,
really?
Honestly. Yeah, horns are just a totally, like, my brain doesn't. I don't know. They don't react, or they're not laid out in a way that something like piano or guitar is in a linear fashion. In the country or the Nashville world, something like a pedal steel is, I don't even know. It's like I'd have to become a spaceship pilot to figure out how to play that.
But banjo mandolin, you were cool.
Yeah. Because I mean, they're related enough to guitar in terms of the technique, like where your right hand, your left hand, how you chord things.
That's still amazing too. And if horns is where you draw that, I mean, that's probably like, it's like you have to breathe a certain way. You have to like use your mouth a certain way. Like your mouth is part of
the way that you would play. I mean, it's you can only play one note at a time too, but where you would put your fingers to make a note doesn't make any sense to me at all. It's like let's say you have two notes that are next to each other in a scale. You might use all 10 fingers to play one and then 4 fingers to play the next. And like, they're not anywhere near each other.
Oh, wow.
But on a piano, maybe they're like 2 keys next to each other,
And you can do it on a piano, fortunately.
Yeah,
not literally a piano, but a synth. You can just use the horn sounds. And then it's like,
I've been known to do that too.
Sorry, horns, you didn't win. I still got this one. So in all the years I've known you, like I've learned, more about that world. And I'll still never forget when I saw your band in Hollywood. And it really was, I mean, I know, I mean, you play at a very, very, like, people who do your job, they are literally, and I'm not trying to flatter you. Like, I know you're a very humble guy, but it's like you guys are literally among the best in the world at what you do. Like that's just objectively a fact. And it's like, when I saw your band, like in Hollywood, and it was just, I've seen every creative iteration of everything you've done since the 7th grade. And I was just, well, me too, man. But like, I was so blown away by that 4-piece that you had. And it was, of course, you and Victor, and Victor, your songwriting partner, and then the keys and the drummer. And I remember I was going up to the keyboard player after, and I'd had like a beer or two. I wasn't like drunk, but I was a little toasty. And I was like, oh man, I got to tell you, I'm one of Anthony's best friends. I've been following him. Like, we've known each other since we were literally 5 years old. I've seen every inclination of every band he's ever had. And man, you guys just gel like no other. This is just, man, you guys have just hit this level. And just watching you guys play together, it's so, like, it's amazing the chemistry you have. And he just goes, yeah, I met him like an hour ago. He seems like a nice guy. And I was just floored.
Yeah, that's true. That was Adam.
Like, I was blown away. Like, he was like, oh, his name's Anthony? Shit, I've been calling him George this whole... Like, I just could not... Like, I would have guessed that you guys, even at your level, I would have guessed that you guys at least rehearsed for, like, nonstop for 2 weeks or something like that. But here it's like that, and it's like... It's because you guys were all players at that level where you speak the language of a song.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's just an amazing thing. And I think it's more than just, you have to be an amazing technical player. Yes. But there's other skills you have to have that some technical players might not have. They might be the best at playing scales or something. But they can't do what you and Victor, Adam, and the rest of that band can do. How would you explain that? Like, kind of unpack it for me. Like to just play at that level and just what it means to be able to operate in a band at that level.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned that it's like speaking a language, because I think it really is. Technicalities, I mean, you don't really have to be technically like a super proficient, clinical musician to work. It actually might hinder some people, but there is sort of I don't know, you learn through osmosis or something, but there's almost an unspoken, musical telepathy that happens at that level. And in certain, I would say more like certain segments of the industry, which is the hired gun segment for sure. Maybe it's a little less common if you come up in sort of a rock band environment where, you and your friends are the artist as a group. But someone like Victor, someone like Adam, Crystal was the drummer on that gig. They're all just, A-level hired gun players. And I think that it really comes from playing so much different kinds of music over the course of, growing up or in your formative years, whatever you want to call it. I used to hate cover bands when I was younger, but to be like in a really good cover band is a great challenge because you have to cover so much ground and become so familiar with not only like the songs themselves, but the approach, the sounds you would use, what is, applicable in this genre or this era, what types of tones were they using? Or in the case of another instrument, like what types of drum sounds or something like that. And like anything, the older I get, I feel like I actually like know less. So, maybe I'm less confident in my ability to do that now than I was when I was 17. But the language part of it, if you don't stop, I pretty much play music every day still, in some form or fashion. I'm working that muscle. I'm still maintaining my fluency and being around different people. I get to play with a really great group of musicians 80 times a year, on my hired gun gig, but I still do a fair amount of other things in Nashville, like label type events or house band type things where you have virtually zero prep time. You get handed a Dropbox of 20 songs and you show up and you don't even really rehearse. And it's incumbent on everyone to kind of take care of their own territory and learn. And then you play the song and you're like, wow, we started and stopped in the same spot, and everything else kind of gels.
That's just so incredible to me. I mean, I think it's like, yeah, it's just so, it's almost like watching the world's best improvisers in a way, where it's just like, it's incredible, like what people can create together when they've just mastered that form of creation. And it's like this idea that like this house band maybe didn't even rehearse. It's mind blowing to me. And then on the same note, you could also put a group of great musicians together in a room, and if they don't have that muscle, they might suck. Actually,
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of crazy to me. Like, I don't know.
I was thinking about one of those types of scenarios was the show that led to me getting to play with Billy Gibbons. I mean, quite literally, that was the scenario. There was no rehearsal. There were multiple artists, sort of a quick on and off, one song per artist or two songs per artist switch. And, it was a lot of country, but it was still pretty genre agnostic. There was like some really heavy, like guitar metalish kind of stuff. There was some cinematic dark pop, female screamo kind of thing.
Wow.
And then like classic country, like classic 90s country. And this particular group of guys that we put together, I kind of felt like almost not out of my depth, but I was like sort of like looking around like in awe of the people that I get to hang out and make music with too.
So, well, let's get into like some more practical stuff.
Sure.
Like what would you say to somebody who is trying to forge a career in music now? Well, what does it really mean to have a career in music now?
I mean, to make a living at all is still, in the percentage of the population is pretty rare still, to make a really good, even upper middle class living, which is sort of, I feel like where I'd personally put myself, although I don't know. I'm not an economist, but it's really hard. It's not impossible, certainly, but it takes a certain type of mental fortitude, I would say, more than a type of personality, because I feel like I'm pretty introverted actually. So when, I feel like a lot of people will tell you like, oh, you got to be super type A and go getter. And I know a lot of people in the music industry that are quiet and humble and to themselves, and they're killers, and they make a great living and they're incredible musicians. But there's sort of two sides to that coin. I feel like a few years ago, if you asked me that, I would say get to a large city as fast as you can. Get to where the industry is on the ground, which would be a New York, an LA, a Nashville, a London, something like that, Toronto. Now it's interesting because of the prevalence of something like TikTok, which I'm not a huge fan of personally. But you can reach so many people instantaneously. However, the caveat being that sort of isolates a lot of people too. You can make a lot of videos in your bedroom and learn how to play guitar from YouTube. But I would still say if you want to, if your goal is to eventually go on tour with Taylor Swift, you have to go to a city where the Taylor Swifts of tomorrow are getting signed and making records and where their bands are being put together. And there's still only a few cities in the world where that is really the case.
Does Taylor Swift usually recruit out of Nashville?
Yeah, and she's had her band for a long time. Most of her band she's had for a really long time.
Does she live there?
Sort of part-time, I think. I think she has a Tennessee driver's license, although I don't know for sure.
I mean, so usually it's like, do most of the biggest acts recruit out of Nashville these days? Or is it mixed?
It's mixed. I would say it's majority LA and Nashville for sure, depending on what side of the country you're living on, what type of music you're doing. There's a bit of New York mixed in, but I feel like the New York people sort of, it's New York by way of Nashville or New York by way of LA. Most tours are launching from Nashville or Los Angeles in terms of like crew and transportation, buses, things like that.
I mean, Nashville always just makes the most sense because you're just smack dab in the middle.
Exactly. It's the best sort of centrally located point to launch from.
It's a great place to be a road comic, and more people are realizing that because there's more and more comedians out of Nashville now than ever before. And part of that is because, a couple heavy hitters live in town, but it's also, people are just realizing like, oh, this is, I think Todd Snyder, well, I'm sure a lot of people have said some variation of this, but I most famously have always heard it from Todd Snyder. This is the city, Nashville's the city where you can really do the weekends. Because you're just so close to a billion different places.
The music is, the music industry or the touring industry, I should say, is identical to that. There are certainly, if you're a massive stadium act, you're going to be gone for 9 months or whatever, 6 weeks at a time. But the vast majority of tours out of Nashville occur on the weekends, which makes it sort of a unique thing in the industry where you can have, you can be tethered to some semblance of a normal life because you get to be home Monday through Thursday, and you get to sleep in your own bed more than, 3 days a month.
Yeah. So continuing shop talk for a little bit, because this is like, it's so fun to see the parallels between music and comedy, So I know that, and again, this is from being your friend and knowing you guys and stuff. Like I know that there are just straight up open jam nights, open mic nights. And some of them are just people playing cover songs, having fun. Some of them are like, there's probably someone hanging out here who might be able to give you a job. When someone wanders into Nashville, how do they figure out which is which?
Downtown used to be, it still is pretty tourist heavy. The difference now is that you can really work. If you work on the Broadway circuit, which is like the heavy cover band circuit, you can make a lot of money if you get into one of the right clubs. But that can become a double-edged sword or sort of a golden handcuff situation. I'd say at this point, the longest standing institution for the type of thing that you're talking about is a thing called Whiskey Jam. And I think it started the year I moved to town. Ironically, they have now moved that event into a venue downtown in the morass of the tourist area.
Oh, interesting.
Which we'll see how that plays out long term. But Whiskey Jam essentially highlights only original unsigned music, and they can be people. I've seen people literally passing through town, that you've never heard of. Like they're a family band from North Florida, and they're on their way to play some fair in Indiana, and they stop by for a night in Nashville and play 3 songs at Whiskey Jam. But it has birthed the career of many, many kind of modern day superstars out of Nashville. And I feel like it's almost not quite a rite of passage, but if you are new to town and you do anything, not just, songwriters for sure, but if you're an artist, if you're looking to be a player in a band, you're looking to be a hired gun session people, this is sort of the inception point, I guess you would say. It's the first place that I would go to meet people that also just moved to town that are trying to do the thing you're doing. Almost like a I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like a famous comedy club open mic night. We've heard a million stories about some of the most legendary comics all sort of being peers at the same time, coming up together, practicing jokes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think a good parallel would be a place like the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
When you first, especially if you're in LA, when you first get to town, you just start going to the Comedy Store and you try to like find your lane.
Yep.
I think the one kind of caveat is like there are eventually things kind of fragment off depending on if you really want to be a writer or if you only want to do stand up or if you want to do, if you want to go more the acting route. Like there's all these little like eventually kind of subsections off. But well, what about the Bluebird? Is the Bluebird, or did the TV show kind of change?
I don't know. I feel like the TV show helped the Bluebird from a tourist marketing standpoint.
Sure.
But maybe is not as indicative of reality in 2023. The Bluebird, excuse me, it's still there, certainly. It's funny because it's smack in the middle of the strip mall that you would never expect to find a venue like that. In my estimation, and I don't go there very often anymore, so I could be wrong, but it feels like it sort of caters to more established songwriters who are not, people that already have hits that have a free night to go share their work with people from out of town, maybe caters to a little bit of an older crowd. They'll still do, new act kind of nights, but it's the fact that by way that it's not in town, like it's not in the city per se, it's in Green Hills, which is 20 minutes outside of town in a suburb, makes it a little less foot trafficky than something like Whiskey Jam.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting to me. Well, then it's just, have you ever noticed, because like I'll say this, this has only happened to me one time in my life, and I'll even say the situation. It was at an Americana Fest, which is a big music festival in Nashville. That's actually an awesome. I would love going to that. But it was the only time in my life I was genuinely embarrassed to be in an audience for something, and it was because Jay Farrar of Sunvolt was doing the Sunvolt album Trace in its entirety solo by himself, and it was like a big event. They were like, Jay Farrar's going to do Trace. And you would think that it was just some like cover act in the middle of a strip mall who was not doing a very good job or something. I mean, people were just talking, and it was like your cliche of people exchanging business card. Well, Jay Farrar's, and he was getting visually ticked off. He was like kind of like, I think a couple times he tried to walk off and they wouldn't let him walk off. and I'm like, dude, what's wrong? What are you guys, what's wrong with all of you? All of you apologize and start behaving right now. I'm not comfortable. Like it was just so, but that's the sort of Nashville thing where it's like when it comes to music, they've seen it all. And
that is a real thing. That is it's almost become a meme.
Yeah. Well, artists will skip the city because of that.
Yeah, there is the sort of meme of, a Nashville crowd is just a sort of, a sea of blank faces with crossed arms, right?
But they're still polite afterwards.
Yeah. They're listening intently, but they don't clap much, and they're not, they seem, there's like a heavy level of disinterest, even if they are,
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. I mean, maybe oversaturation, or like you're saying, like we've seen it all, we've got music 24/7 here in 1,700 different venues. Like, okay.
And to an extent, I get it because, like anywhere else, like similar how like LA or New York is with comedy, the good is amazing. The bad is, oh my God. So like, I get it when you're surrounded all the time, but it's still, there's this artist that I like called Beans on Toast. He was actually the first episode of the show. I listened to that episode, He has an episode, a song called "Fuck You, Nashville," and it's all about that experience. Oh yeah, you should check it out. It's pretty funny, but he talks about how he had a bad experience, and he's had good experiences since. He's a very polite, diplomatic guy. Like he's totally, and he'll play that song in Nashville, and they kind of appreciate it. But he was talking about his first experience in Nashville, and I'm like, oh yeah. And then it's funny, on the drive home, my friend who came with me, my buddy Drew, we were kind of talking about it. And I'm like, yeah, man, there's some truth in what he was saying, though. Let me tell you this Jay Farrar story. And it's like, so yeah, the Nashville crowds, man. I mean, does it make you work harder?
Maybe a little bit. Definitely when my band, The Love Electric, was more active, when Victor still lived in Nashville, I sort of feel like we would, I don't know, everybody, all parties involved are obsessed with Springsteen to a degree. So, but we would kind of like have this mentality like we're going to war, even if it was a tiny club, on 8th Avenue or something. But it would sort of inspire you to, I'm going to make somebody listen. I'm going to make somebody not necessarily like me, but I'm going to make them physically react because they're just sitting there with their eyes crossed, or their arms crossed and their eyes rolled, like, oh God,
Oh, look at all these people with dreams and goals. So annoying.
Yeah, I know. It really is, though.
So plug away, man. Where can people go to find your stuff?
So most of my stuff is anti-songs. Instagram is probably where I'm most active on social media, at anti_songs with a Z, SONGZ. Antisongs.com. That's with an S. Sorry. I think the other one was taken. I can't remember. Either of those, pretty much, you can find me anywhere else using those as a landing platform.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me.
Dude, absolutely, man. I mean, you have always been one of my best friends and still are. And you've been, I mean, we don't need to get into specifics right now, but you literally were there for me at my worst moment in my life that hopefully will go down as the worst moment. I hope I don't pass it up. But I mean, yeah, you were there for me in a way that I will never forget and will always be incredibly just gracious for. And I hope I never have to repay the favor at that level. but if I ever do, of course I will. You know it.
First call.
You got it, dude. You got it. So yeah, like, thank you for that. And yeah, man, you've always been an inspiration. Whenever I want to just want to take it easy, I think about you, and I'm like, I probably shouldn't. I probably should try to at least write a page.
Yeah, maybe a page a day or whatever they say, right?
Hey, that's pretty good. And I try to, I try to write something, at least something kind of like what you're saying. Like, I'm doing music in some capacity. I try to write something every day. Sometimes it's just working on a script. Sometimes it's just like one joke that the next day I'm like, that joke sucks, but something.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a muscle, right? I mean, it's such a cliche, but it is kind of, as long as you don't quit the race, that's the whole point.
That was Anthony Rankin. Check out his website, antisongs.com. That's ANTIsongs.com. Music for the 1000 podcast is provided by Andrew Saxena. Be sure to check out his podcast, the Bay Watching Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. I said podcast way too many times in that sentence. Leave us a 5-star review, would you? That really helps grow the show. And if you want to support this show on the sustainability end, you can do so over at patreon.com/Ron Placone. For a give what you can level, you get all kinds of exclusive content. You get the 1000 bonus podcast. I do streams, full stand-up clips, not available anywhere else. I'll make you a theme song, and that's all for a give what you can level. Even $1 a month goes a long way. That's patreon.com/Ron Placone. Guys, happy holidays. Happy New Year. This is the first calendar year that the 1000 podcast has been in existence. The podcast is not a year old yet. It's only a couple months old. But I'm really excited about what's coming up. I'm really excited to be doing this project, and I want to just take a moment to thank all of you so much for listening to this show, because guess what? You're the early adapters. This is still a very new show. By podcast standards, it's very, very new, and I was pretty nervous to start something new. It's very intimidating to start something brand new. I was nervous to do so, and in some ways it is starting over again. In some ways it is, in some ways it isn't, but nonetheless, it's an intimidating thing, but I'm so happy we're doing it. And to all of you who are among the early adapters, thank you so very much. And I hope you've enjoyed consuming this show as much as I've enjoyed making it for you so far. And I can't wait to, here's to 2024. I can't wait to get through all 1,000 of these. It's been an amazing ride already. See you next week.
Hey guys, Ron Placone here. Take your own 1,000 challenge. No, you don't need to interview 1,000 people, although if you want to do that, go for it. Your 1,000 challenge can be whatever you want. Maybe you want to call a friend out of the blue once a week. Maybe you want to read a book every month. Maybe you want to start a different garden every season. I guess that might be dependent on where you live. Look, the point of the challenge is taking on an endeavor that enriches your life in some way, and it can be measured. And then, of course, you do it regularly. That's what 1,000 is doing for me, and hopefully for you too. The main reason for this podcast and every podcast I've ever done is to build community. So take your own challenge. Then join our Facebook group. It's called 1,000 What's Your Challenge? ? That's 1,000 What's Your Challenge ? And post about what your 1,000 challenge is and the progress you're making. All I ask is that people be encouraging of each other's challenges. This is personal and vulnerable, so be cool. There's enough negativity on social media. We don't need to add to it. For those of you who aren't on Facebook, hopefully in the future we'll be expanding to places like Discord, Reddit, but for now, we're starting on Facebook. And again, that Facebook group is called 1,000 What's Your Challenge? See you there.